We got to here, so we'll go from the top of this page here. This is Mr. Enfield's view on asking questions. He says you start a question, and it's like starting a stone. You sit quietly on the top of a hill, and away the stone goes, starting others. So he creates, if you like, a landslide. And presently some bland old bird, the last you would have thought of, is knocked on the head in his own back garden, and the family have to change their name. So this is about reputation. So the idea is, what I like is that everyone has secrets. So no one asks the question because it's like, where were you last night? Well, I was with this guy. Well, why was he there? And why was he there? And the idea is, if you ask a question, you bring down everyone's reputation. In other words, everybody's doing stuff secretly, but everyone's sort of keeping quiet about it. No, sir. I make it a rule of mine, which I like. A rule of mine. The more it looks like Queer Street, the less I ask. Now again, in these days, the word queer has different meanings. In those days, the word queer simply means something which is unusual. The less I ask. A very good rule too, said the lawyer. But I've studied the place for myself, continued Mr. Enfield. It seems scarcely a house. There is no other door, and nobody goes in or out of that one. But in a great while, the gentleman of my adventure. So the gentleman of his adventure is the mystery man. So Mr. Enfield has become kind of obsessed with the mystery as well. He says I studied it. What he means is, I watch the door a lot. So when he says I've studied, he means that he's kind of stalking, right? He says I've watched this door a lot. I've watched the door a lot. What's the problem? You sure? Okay. I've watched the door a lot, and nobody comes in or out of it ever, apart from this guy very, very rarely. There are 3 windows. What is it? Oh. Okay, I'll sort it out for you. There are 3 windows looking on a court on the first floor. None below. The windows are always shut. Okay? But they're clean. And then there is a chimney which is generally smoking. So somebody must live there. And yet, it's not so sure. For the buildings are so packed together, which is a bit about, you were saying, Alfie, about the population. The population about that court, that it's hard to say where one ends and the other begins. So Mr. Enfield has been looking at this door, he's been looking at this house, and he says, the chimney's always going. So somebody's inside the house, nobody comes in or out ever, it's like a complete mystery. The pair walked on again for a while in silence, and then, Enfield, said Mr. Utterson, that's a good rule of yours. Yes, I think it is, returned Enfield. But for all that, continued the lawyer, there's one point I want to ask. I want to ask the name of that man who walked over the child. Well, said Mr. Enfield, I can't see what harm it would do. It was a man of the name of Hyde. So this is Mr. Hyde of the title. So Mr. Utterson, what sort of man is he to see? Now this bit's very important, okay? What kind of man is he? Describe him to me. He's not easy to describe. There is something wrong with his appearance. Something displeasing. Something downright detestable. So when you look at him, something is not quite right about him, right? It makes me uncomfortable. I don't like it, but I don't really know what it is. I never saw a man I so disliked, and yet I scarce know why. He must be deformed somewhere. he gives a strong feeling of deformity. So say that word twice, right? So he doesn't look like a fully formed human. Although I couldn't specify the point. He's an extraordinary looking man. And yet, I really can name nothing out of the way. No, sir. I can make no hand of it. I can't describe him. And it's not from want of memory, for I declare I can see him this moment. So this is very, very, very strange, right? He says, I can really easily imagine this guy. I can see him in my brain, but I couldn't describe him. There's something about him that is wrong. Now, from what we've learned about context, we're starting to think about this idea of degeneration. Is he a kind of like unevolved human? There's something about him that isn't quite formed. He's deformed, right? If forming is to make something, he is unmade. Mr. Utterson again walked some way in silence, and obviously under a weight of consideration. Are you sure he used the key? He inquired at last. What was that? My dear sir, began Enfield, surprised out of himself. Yes, I know. So that question has upset Mr. Enfield. Yes, I know, said Mr. Utterson. I know it must seem strange. The fact is, if I do not ask you the name of the other party, it is because I know it already. You see, Richard, your tale has gone home. If you have been inexact at any point, you had better correct it. So when he says this, gone home, it means that it's like, it's hit him. I think you might have warned me, returned the other, with a touch of sullenness, but I have been pedantically exact, as you call it. The fellow had a key, and what's more, he still has it. I saw him use it not a week ago. Mr. Utterson sighed deeply, but never said a word, and the young man presently resumed. Here is another lesson to say nothing, said he. I am ashamed of my long tongue. What does he mean by a long tongue? He's not like, what does he mean? Yeah, of gossiping, if you like, right? To gossip. Let's make a bargain never to refer to this again. With all my heart, said the lawyer. I shake hands on that, Richard. That's Mr. Enfield. It's called Richard Enfield. That bit's kind of confusing at the end. But essentially, Mr. Utterson says to him, are you absolutely sure what you said is true? Absolutely sure. Because I know who the man who's having the check is. I've worked it out. I figured it out. And are you sure he had a key? And Mr. Enfield says, yeah, I'm sure he has a key. My question for you is this. What does it mean to have a key? Why does the having the key matter? So there's this door and this guy has a key and he goes in and out of this door. Right? What does the key symbolise? Why is Mr. Utterson so obsessed about the key issue? Right? See what you think. Talk about it. What do you think?